All right, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're all having a great Monday, June 13th, 2022. Game 5 of the NBA Finals is tonight in San Francisco. Warriors, Celtics. Series is tied 2-2. We're going to talk hoops on a Monday. Typically, we do the basketball stuff on Tuesdays, but this time of year, we got to make exceptions, right? Because of what's going on in playoff land. So take a look at that. Matt Meiselman is here for discussion. We also have the Stanley Cup Playoffs starting up. That's Wednesday. Stanley Cup Playoffs, Stanley Cup Final starting Wednesday. Colorado, Tampa. We'll do a little crossover. We'll let Meiselman say goodnight to his officially say goodnight to the New York Rangers, and then we'll get set for Tampa and Colorado. Jeff Ulrich will jump in, and then we move on to the third major of the year, the U.S. Open, taking place in DraftKings neck of the woods. Not Boston, technically, Brookline, Mass., but just outside of Boston. So we're looking forward to that fully loaded Monday program. So if you have any questions, comments, takes, concerns about the basketball, the hockey, and or golf, get them in. We will get to as many questions and your feedback as possible. Matt Meiselman, I caught you this morning on the Sweat, which airs at 11 a.m. weekdays on the DraftKings channels, YouTube, Twitch, and here on the Twitter stream via DK Nation. So I heard that you feel there's value in the Celtics, and the line this morning was at 3.5 when you did the show. Well, what do you know? It's moved to 4 over on the DraftKings Sportsbook. And I heard you talk some props, but I think you made some good points. When you look at the total, you look at the spread, these teams are figuring each other out, so it's not all that surprising that the number continues to move down as the series continues. But what is your latest gauge of Game 5 with this series tied back in Golden State?
Well, first of all, I do feel somewhat validated because I did say when the Celtics were plus 3.5 this morning, if you like them, just wait, because I do think the public is on the Warriors for this game, and that probably gets it to 4. And now we're seeing that. I don't think it gets to 4.5, though. This is probably as high as the number is at, and then maybe it drops to 3.5 later on. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the Warriors deserve to be favored in this game. The home court advantage is more than sufficient to make up for the difference between these two teams. I still think the Celtics are better, but the Warriors' home court has been especially good throughout the playoffs for whatever reason. But I think any home court would be enough where the Warriors should be favored in this game. It's just, I think it should only be like a point or so rather than 4. So taking plus 4, I think, is a reasonable bet. Plus 145 on the money line, I also think, is a reasonable bet. And then the other bet that I really like right now is Tatum to win Finals MVP. I know we've spent a lot of time on that over the last couple of weeks, talking about how like Jaylen Brown was kind of entering the conversation. We know that Curry will be the winner if the Warriors win. And honestly, like, there's a chance he could win even if the Celtics win. I think that's a really small chance, but some chance nonetheless. But if the Celtics do win, which I still sort of expect them to, I think Tatum is far and away the most likely player to get Finals MVP. And you're getting much larger odds on him than you're getting on the Celtics to win the series. So that's really what I'm looking at the most, honestly. Like, my favorite bet that currently exists across all markets is Tatum for MVP. I just think we have to see him play better than he's played. And if he doesn't, they're probably not going to win anyway, right? Like, they're not going to win this series if Tatum is shooting under 40% from the field to close out these last couple of games. So I do expect a bounce back. Maybe it's, he goes back to that really, really efficient passing that he was doing earlier. But I expect him to play well. And I think that, I think this is just too long of a number for him. So that's where I'm looking right now. But ultimately, like, I'm just really nervous for this game. Like, that's really just what I'm feeling overall.
Yeah. Well, I get why, because a Tatum MVP bet right now, 2-2 on the road at Golden State, which, again, the Celtics and the Warriors, to be fair, they have both responded very well off a loss. Both teams are undefeated when you combine their records off a loss in the playoffs. This Tatum pick correlates with him playing well tonight, and probably not, it doesn't have to happen, but the Celtics kind of have to win tonight.
Yeah, can we just talk about this trend of the bouncing back off losses?
Yeah, and I heard you say that too. You're kind of over it, but
over
you know what? And you know what? I get why. And you're right. I'm a sucker for trends. Okay, I'm a square. You do the real homework. I get it. I know. But I mean, you can't help but look at it because it's true. Like one night you're like, okay, we're going to see this, but you can't help as a fan, admittedly, but also someone who's just following the team. They keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's not even the loss part, Matt. It's with the Celtics specifically. If they win a game, maybe you've heard this. If they win a game by 8 or more, their record in these playoffs, I think the next night is 2-7. 2-7. So that's going back to like Brooklyn, maybe the Game 7 Miami into Game 1 Golden State. Like that's the problem. They clearly not only off a win lose, but sometimes even if they win, or they're losing, like it's clearly a letdown after they win by a significant amount.
Let's just I'll give everyone the benefit of the doubt because honestly, I'll give the harsh part first and then we'll get into it. Okay. I think the reason that people tend to focus on trends is because they don't have the numbers on hand to quantify like the real value of the teams. So they default to trends because it's easier information to parse.
It is.
So it's just simpler, right? Okay. But having said that, if we're going to dig into what the trends are, like what would we say? Like I'm asking you, what do you think is happening? Like what are they doing after a win or doing after a loss that would be causing it? Because if, of course, it has happened so far, but if we want to actually say that this sort of stuff is predictive going forward, we kind of need to have a reason why it's happening, right? Like I have no idea. So like, what do you think they're doing off wins or losses that's changing the way the next game goes?
Offensively, they go away from what their identity is.
Why though? Like, why would they, after winning a game, stop playing the way that they played to win?
Okay, so maybe give the opponent more credit. Maybe the opponent is making adjustments, but I find the adjustments thing and giving the coaches credit for that, that's a little overrated too. Like Steve Kerr's adjustments versus Ime Udoka's adjustments.
They're both good. They're both good coaches.
Exactly. So I think it's a wash. So It comes down to effort and desperation by the team that lost the previous night.
I do think there is something to the zigzag theory of like, not every series in this year's playoffs, but we certainly saw it in Game 2 in Golden State. Like that was as blatant of a referee impact as you can have in a basketball game where they just officiated the game differently in Game 2 than they did in Game 1. And we saw it a bit in the Boston-Miami series also, where when Miami was down, they just let them get away with everything. So maybe it's the officials. I don't know. It's weird though. Like I will acknowledge there are things that I just may not understand about this, but ultimately, like I think it has to be overblown just in the sense that like the people who are touting this the most, the idea of the trends, are not giving the other side of the argument, which is just what is like the foundational capability of the team, right? They're only talking about the trends. And I think it's just because it's easier.
Well, it might be the trend. What relates to trends is intangibles. And they are, I know it's not the same exact team because there's no Durant, but the experience and having been there before thing is a factor in this series, just like it was for Milwaukee because they won the title last year, just like it was for Miami because they won the title in 2020. And you know what? Even go back to Brooklyn, as annoying as that team is, Kyrie Irving, champion, Kevin Durant, multiple-time champion, finals MVP. That thought process, and I realize they swept the Nets, but they really going back to the last 3 series, including this one, the NBA Finals, the Celtics having been on the stepping stool to be in the finals. Now they're in the finals, and we'll talk. We can talk more specifically about Tatum and Curry because the Curry's points props. I'm like, really, like, is this guy ever going to score below 30 in the series? You'd think it would happen, but clearly, he's fine. But I bring up Tatum because Tatum where's that next thing? That thing of like, no, dude, you got to go do it. You got to go do what you did against Milwaukee in Game 6, 2 rounds ago.
I was just going to say, like, he did it against Milwaukee, and where's it been?
But, and maybe that's the night tonight, but
What's strange though is Milwaukee, I still think is better than any other team the Celtics have. Even without Middleton, I think the Bucks were the toughest opponent the Celtics faced in the playoffs, including the Warriors. So like he did it against them, which I guess is an indication maybe he's a little hurt. Like we know he has this shoulder neck issue And maybe that's what this is, right? Because against the most difficult defense that they faced, he was at his best in the Milwaukee series.
Yeah.
So it's just, I have to default to the guy is just not 100%. And we've seen it, like he's grabbing at his shoulder every so often, and maybe that's just all this is. And if that's the case, then it's like I have a harder time being optimistic that the Celtics ultimately win this series. Like if we said Tatum is just 10% of his shots, he's just not going to have rhythm because something flares up in his shoulder while he's shooting. Like that's a problem,
right?
So,
and
who knows?
That's important to bring up because that might be why he has turned into more of a facilitator in this series. Take the blowout out of it. The other 3 games have been competitive going into the fourth quarter. Tatum's had at least 6 assists in all 3 of those games. But that's of course the Celtics are keeping it quiet. He's keeping it quiet because he's playing. But clearly there's this, you have to make this jurisdiction of whether or not is he being too passive when they get into crunch time.
Yeah.
Where in his head, he's thinking, well, I want to play the right way because that's why we're here. They finally figured it out how to play together. But then there's those moments, as we know, when we watch these highly competitive playoff games, when you're the guy in the fourth quarter, get out of the way. I'm going to take us home here. And that's, I think that's what he did against the Bucks. That's why we bring that game up. Yeah. And basically, I mean, I'll pull it up right here. He took 32 shots in that game and he made 17 of them. He hasn't had a game where he's taken 30 shots since then, and it hasn't been close.
17 for 32. If he could do that tonight, that would just be pretty awesome to watch.
Oh, I would like to think they win the game, but yeah, I mean, attempts in this series, 17, 19, 23, 23. Hasn't shot north of 42% in any game in this series. But he's making threes. I mean, he made threes last game, and he made threes in game 2.
To give the Warriors a little credit, like as bad as Draymond's been offensively, at the end of the fourth quarter, specifically in game 4, because he was resting for most of the fourth quarter, but then he came back in and actually made a few defensive plays.
Who's this?
Thompson, Draymond. And then even Klay Thompson made a couple defensive plays. Wiggins has been defending well. Like the Warriors defense locked in at the end of the game. So yes, Tatum is not playing the way that we want, but also the defense of Golden State really stepped up at the end of game 4. I don't know how sustainable that is. Like they just channeled whatever effort they had left and basically played above expectation on defense in the last few minutes of the game. I don't know they can sustain that for a whole game. They probably can't. But the Celtics, like really the adjustment, this happens every time they lose. It's like, what adjustment should the Celtics make? Just play with more pace, tempo. Get quicker into the offense just so you get a better quality look, right? Because I think a lot of why Tatum is shooting poorly is just he's shooting at the end of the shot clock because they haven't initiated offense until it's too late.
I got a thought on that, actually. And you know what? I haven't even checked if there's a line on it yet. Third quarter. Here it is.
Oh, no. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about the third quarter.
You do or don't?
I do not. I mean, like this trend, I think, is more real, honestly, than the bounce back off a loss trend. But the problem with betting the third quarter before the game is we don't know what the score will be at halftime. Like if the Warriors are up at halftime, this is a terrible bet.
Yes.
Like the Celtics will be favored in the third quarter if they're down 10 points. The reason I think like the Celtics have played so well in second quarters, which is playing into why the Warriors are playing well in the third quarter, right? Because a lot of these have been where they're behind. I think the Celtics have been either ahead or tied in all the games at halftime. Do I have that wrong? Because game 1, they got killed in the third before the comeback, but they were actually winning at halftime. Game 2, they were down 2 at halftime. And then in games 3 and 4, they were also winning at halftime. Like the part of why the Warriors are playing well in the third is because of the score effects of basketball, where a team that has a lead is just going to let up a little bit. And the Celtics have either been tied or winning in all the games at halftime. So I don't know. I mean, like, could you go into a same game parlay and parlay like Celtics first half money line with the Warriors third quarter? I guess.
Yep.
But I think that's reading too much into it, honestly. Like this trend has some merit, but I don't think it's as predictive as it's being made out to be.
Well, more so I wanted to see if there was a line there in the first place because DK made a wise decision to wait. It took its time to get there. Celtics were outscored 30-24 in the third quarter the other night. But I bring that up because if there is something that the Celtics can adjust to that I thought they did not do. So you asked the question, well, what is it that they're doing differently?
Sure.
Like, why would they go away from what has gone well suddenly off of a win or off of a loss and then just go back to what they were doing well. And this, I want to make this about both teams. I'm not just trying to give a Celtics angle, but I'm asking. I'm curious. There's something to be said, and the total reflects this. Don't the Celtics have to realize, especially in the fourth quarter in those final 5 minutes, but the third quarter as well, you can't turn the game into a track meet and try to shoot threes up and down with this team. Like, truly, pace and space, the clock is your friend at the end of these games. And I feel like in the fourth quarter, this is where the experience thing does matter, because Golden State not only has been there before, but they know how they play their game. Whereas the Celtics, they just figured out how to play their game 4 months ago when they watched your video and figured it out. Like, you inspired them.
That's what did it. Yeah.
They've been doing it. They've been in the finals 4 times. Your video goes back 4 months.
I thought I was giving myself too much credit. You're now adding on even more credit for what okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I'm trying to remind you, like, they just figured this out, and now here they are in the NBA Finals. So when you're getting exposed by a team that is shooting the three well and can really shoot the three, I think that is where the experience and not having been there before does matter, and why they might not do it on purpose, but why they do off of a loss have more focus, because then they go back to the tape and the coach can say, guys, we can't do that. Okay, coach. And they're just not experienced enough to string together multiple good nights against a good opponent.
I think I partially agree with you, because there are times where the Warriors also fall apart in the fourth quarter. I mean, just look at game 3, right? Like,
yes, but they can flush it out quicker and figure it out.
I don't know. Maybe.
And they're not as talented as the Celtics. The Celtics are better.
Okay. No, that's true. So, yes, the Warriors are playing above their talent level, and the Celtics are playing below their talent level to some extent. I think even with those considerations, the Celtics are still supposed to win.
Agreed.
Yes. Yeah. The Warriors have like a synergy within their team. They like play the pairings of players. I mean, it might not be the experience as much as it is just like Draymond's ability to dribble handoff feeds into what Curry and Clay do well, and the team just fits together in a way that the Celtics don't. Maybe it's that. I'm not sure, but I'm just not really buying the experience as the reason. Like, the Celtics have plenty of experience too. Marcus Smart is not young anymore. Al Horford certainly is a veteran. And the Warriors have some core players that are very young, like Jordan Poole, especially, Andrew Wiggins to a lesser extent. Kevon Looney hasn't been around that long either, certainly not in the playoffs. So, like, it's just Curry and Draymond and Clay, sure, tons of experience there, but it's not like everyone on the Warriors is 35 and everyone on the Celtics is 25.
You guys are still on the Celtics team, eh? Just
Jeff,
in right till the end.
They lasted. You know who didn't last though? You know who didn't last, Jeff? The Rangers.
I told you.
That choking franchise.
Jeff was right. Although,
not
Jeff,
joking. They're a young team. They did.
Jeff, Ryan Strome on the doorstep in game 6. Like,
it was a close game.
Or sorry, game 5.
Game 5, yeah.
If Strome just makes a play that anyone makes 98% of the time, the Rangers win that game.
So that game was, I mean, you're exactly right. That game was insanely close. At the same time, that game went like to a letter exactly how I thought it was going to be.
Sure.
It was really close. Tampa would get the break when they need it because they're Tampa, and they just win like a 3-1 game. And it's like, I don't know. I'm very rarely right about things, but that game went to a T how I thought it would go.
Sure.
But it was insanely
coin
close.
Flip. Ignoring the results, like, they played exactly dead even.
Yeah.
We agreed that Tampa would have a massive advantage in game 6 either way.
Yeah, it was over after game 5. I mean, yeah.
And especially the Rangers deciding not to play Cabo Caco, who's been like really good in the playoffs and is like one of their best young players. And they're just like, no, we're going to just sit him out and play some like grinders. And I don't know.
I mean, that was their whole advantage over these teams, like having the young legs down in the bottom 6 and stuff. So I didn't get that either, but nice run by the Rangers. They'll be back. They
overachieved for sure. And yeah, the team's only going to get better because they're very young. So
to bridge,
I feel somewhat okay about it.
To bridge the show, Matt, you want to get a quick thought in on the Stanley Cup final before you go?
Yeah, I want to go back to what we talked about with the Avalanche being such large favorites to win the cup. I've come down on this actually a little bit. Like, we don't know about Nazem Kadri or Braden Point at this stage, like going into the finals, even with 2 days left. But it's weird that the Avs are only -175. But I actually kind of get it, because I think this is just intuition, but I think that Point is more likely to be healthy for the start of the series than Kadri is. And I think that's kind of a big deal. So I think that's really the main, if we were wrong for being too high on Colorado last week, I think that's really the reason. I think Tampa's going to get healthier sooner than the Avs are.
Got thoughts, Jeff, for Miles?
And look, I mean, Matt's right. Like that factor could make the series closer, but Colorado's a team who they did well. They missed guys for a long portions of the strat. It really didn't hurt them that much this year, man. Like when this team gets up to turns it up, it's I just don't think Tampa can keep up with them. Tampa had trouble keeping up with the Rangers on the road. Now they got to start 2 games. I honestly think the series could be over in 5. I do not mind betting series props like that. So I'm going to stick with my initial gut call there. I think that Colorado is just, it sucks when you, from a betting and discussing it, it kind of sucks when you get a favorite like this, but it does happen where these teams are they're just on another level. It's like seeing, John Rahm win the US Open at plus 600 or something. He was bigger than that last year, but it's like a huge betting favorite in golf just coming through. Like when Dustin won the Masters, it's kind of like that. And I think Colorado is just in a similar spot this year. I just don't think that it's going to matter. I think that Tampa has done very well to get this point, but I see a clear discrepancy in the forward and just the speed of the game for Colorado. And I think that's going to shine through in the series. So I'll stick with my Colorado call. Very happy that the price has come down to below -200. And I think it's very bettable.
Just to give you 1 point in your favor is Colorado is way more well rested at this point, right? Like even if Braden Point plays and Kadri doesn't, the other players on the team, like the Avs won over a week ago, and Tampa just clinched the series on Saturday.
And that's hurt teams. Especially this year, it seems like the COVID layoffs.
Nathan McKinnon's not going to let them party it up.
No,
he's cracking down. They aren't leaving their hotel rooms or their houses for a week. He's got a security cam on every player on that team's house.
Totally. You don't want Nathan McKinnon mad at you. But I was just gonna say, this is the Stanley Cup Finals. This isn't the game 68 of the regular season. This is you want to be rested for this. So I think this one will be over fairly quick.
Wow. Okay.
I'm a little bit more nervous about it today than I was last week calling the Avalanche because Tampa is Tampa, but I'm going to go against them here. So
any bet you like on Colorado to just win the series, whether it's in 5 or 6 or 7, or even maybe a sweep, I mean, a little value in all of those still, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think
all of them.
I kind of going to do they have the series spread? Yeah, just like I said, you want a little bit better odds. I see this being potentially a 5-game series and even just 6 plus 110. I see that as very doable. I think that if Colorado, you could wait to bet the series. I'll just stick with my initial call. I mean, I think betting the series spread is good. I mean, if you want to be a little bit safe, you could take plus 110, but honestly, I think the bet is just to take Colorado to win. I mean,
right. Yeah. Lay the juice. There you go.
Yeah.
-170. So that's come down as you guys just mapped out. So, all right, Meiselman, get out of here. Try to, so do you have a strategy of how you won't stay stressed? What's your game? What's your plan tonight?
Bet the Warriors and then
take us inside the Meiselman household. What happens?
You have to emotionally hedge things. I mean,
there's 2 opposite answers. There's the substances into your body one, and then there's the Zen meditative answer. And I'll just say it could be either of those. I don't know.
Okay.
It could be a lot of caffeine or other drinks, or it could be just, stare at the wall for a while and try to be very stoic and focused. And, I'm open to both of those options. I'll let people choose which of those they prefer.
That got dark really fast. Okay. You can
But it's
leave
in a
now.
positive way. No. It's
sure.
It's not as dark as it sounds, I promise.
Okay.
It's going to be fun either way. They already made it to the finals. I've enjoyed this run very much. Even if they don't win, well, I mean, I'm going to be sad, but this has been awesome.
You're going to be upset.
I'm going to be very upset, but I'll also
I would be upset if I was a Boston fan. I mean, you don't want to losing to Draymond Green and Steph Curry.
I don't like Draymond Green.
Yeah, I mean, Steph's fine.
All right. Preaching sense on Twitter. Matt Meiselman, one of our very best at DraftKings, covering the NBA. One of the best when it comes to the DK Sportsbook, covering the NBA. Thanks so much. Jeff, US Open. Looking forward to it, huh? 3rd major of the year. It's in our backyard, DraftKings backyard.
Yes.
Brookline, Mass, which is just outside of Boston.
No, this is going to be a good one. Course looks really good. they've rerouted it. It's a 27-hole layout at the country club, but they've kind of just like made their own course this week for the US Open, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, they called Tom Brady and said, hey, can we, that old house that you used to own, can we knock it over and spend some money on?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I made that up. No,
did he actually used to live on the country club? I didn't know.
He used to live in Brookline. That's where he lived.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. But
makes you hate it even more, right?
It should be a good test, man. I mean, like, I think it's going to play, we've seen shorter courses in the US Open before, but they often trick them out. And like this one has a lot of like little weird, it's almost like Open Championship in style. The fairways, they got a lot of humps and mounds and stuff. So it's going to be weird kicks. I think it's going to be a tougher scoring week like it normally is. So excited to see how this one plays. And I mean, we got some of the players playing at the top of their games here. So, from a breakdown perspective, if you want to start at the top of the board, I see some people giving John Rahm love. If I wanted to bet John Rahm, it would probably be needed to be more like plus 1,600, which is not at the DraftKings Sportsbook right now. You can get that price. That'd probably be fine. But I'd probably just, if you're staying in the top 4 golfers, I'd probably say Justin Thomas is the guy you should go to. Playing really good golf right now, obviously. Just, very mentally focused, it seems like, with JT, has that US Open experience. And I think this setup will help him a little bit more. It's not so power oriented. It's more precision. He plays these golf courses well. So we're betting the favorites. It's JT for me, but I'm going to start further down. And I like Patrick Cantlay for this setup. Guy who has let me down in majors numerous times, but I got to keep going back to him. Really good at Memorials last time out. Was a lot better than most of the top players there. It's kind of getting overlooked now because everybody played last week, did what they did. So Rory, Justin getting all the love, but Cantlay, a third Memorial, has like 6 top 10s on the year and a win. T15 at this event last year. He's just a player who just needs to break out in the major soon. He's just too good not to. And I think this setup is very, very nice for Patrick Cantlay. Smaller greens, a little bit shorter, great all-around game. I like him on DraftKings. You got up there now too. 9,200 is a very good price. So kind of a player I'm building around this week. And especially for betting.
Yeah, he's played well too. Didn't have a great PGA championship, but other than that, I mean, he's in Masters.
And that's kind of the main case against him. Like, generally players who've done well at the US Open recently, they've kind of like had a top 10 at a major already, or they've done well at the majors in the year prior, but Cantlay hasn't done much, but everything else checks out with them. Right. So I'm not going to discount a guy just on like one missed cut. Mm-hmm. Maybe just didn't like the course. This is going to be a little bit different from the PGA Championship too. I know they're kind of similar setups sometimes. It's shorter course, but more claustrophobic. I just like the setup a lot for Patrick Cantlay. So player I definitely have interest in this week, but there's others too, obviously. So
yeah, just real quick too, looking at the weather, because that is always a mystery.
Hey, you're out there. You tell me. I mean,
yeah, well, I mean, it benefits my planning as well for the weekend, which is great. So killing 2 birds with 1 stone, as they like to say.
You're chicken grilling. It's very important.
Thursday looks good. Jeff, excellent point. Wow. I mean, see, you do look out for me, unlike others that contribute to these shows. I won't name names. Thursday looks good. Friday, chance of rain, thunderstorms. Saturday, small chance of rain. Sunday looks good. Okay. 87, high of 87 on Friday. It can be hot.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, a little bit of humid. Yeah. And some thunderstorms. That might be the biggest worry. Like Thursday afternoon, I know when I checked the weather last, the wind might be getting up a little bit. So that's something to keep an eye on, but I don't think you're going to see huge weather splits. I think the one thing that you could see is some stop and start with the thunderstorms, but
right.
You can't, like, good luck guessing when thunderstorms are going to roll in. So it's not really something you have to worry about. You just kind of got to play through it. I mean, hopefully your player gets a good draw if there does be some kind of bias, but you might want to watch the wind on Thursday afternoon. That was like the one spot I'm probably just going to check on Wednesday for lineups. But other than that, like I said, I mean, where the odds are right now, we have seen winners at this event. John Rahm won at plus 1,000 last year, but going back to 2019, Gary Woodland won at plus 5,000. Bryson was like around, I think Bryson went off around plus 2,800 when he won in 2020. So we've had you're probably not going to get like 150 to 1 winner here. It could happen, but the US Open is generally just about guys. Quality, recent form is just so big.
Yep.
You need to show it. Top 10s, they trending well in approach. Are they consistent, like an all around game? So you need to be targeting here. So Going down the board, a couple other guys I like. Actually, let's talk because we don't have that much time. Tommy Fleetwood at 6,500. Let's get him in because, like, to me right now, if you're going to bounce out of like the plus 3,000, plus 4,000 range, I think Fleetwood is your best option. I really do. I look at this range and like Billy Horschel's down there plus 5,500, but Fleetwood being grouped with like Connors and Varner and even Justin Rose. And I know Justin Rose shot 60 yesterday, but Justin Rose isn't winning the US Open at like 40 years old. He's just not. Tommy Fleetwood, I think, has a very legitimate shot this week. His approach game has been on the uptick. His driver was terrible the last couple of years for whatever reason. He's finally seems to have figured that out. And he's been elite in like just an all-around facet this year. T5 at the PGA. He's got a great US Open record. He's got the experience we want. I think this guy's live. And again, I see this setup for Tommy Fleetwood, and it's really good. His proximity from 200 yards in is perfect. So maybe not as many long irons on the country club as a regular US Open setup. I really like him. It comes down to price. Like I said, like you look at this range, you look at plus 5,000 or better, and you look at these guys, and I just think Fleetwood by far has the best chance to win this week. So I think he's the bet there for me at plus 6,500. If you're taking a shot with a guy outside that, like I said, that plus 4,000, 5,000 threshold, I think Fleetwood's it for me. And I'll be on him this week. So, but you know, there's a couple other guys above him too. Like I said, you really shouldn't be going too much further down than that. I think this range right here, Max Homa is a guy. I think I mentioned him with you before.
Yep.
I mentioned him a couple times on the slate, Max Homa. You used to be able to, he was at plus 6,500. He's gone down to plus 4,500. He's 8,100 on DraftKings this week. He's probably going to be popular. That's fine. But like, this is a guy with the kind of all-around game too that you want for a US Open, trending and approach, very confident putter. Grabbing a piece of Max Homa, I think this week at plus 4,500, just fine for an outright. And then another player who I'm kind of interested to see people's opinions on this week, but I think Daniel Berger at plus 3,500 is just another player, much like Cantlay and even Fleetwood. I think Daniel Berger is going to really benefit from the setup. I think that the more like, you know, approaches that just aren't going like above 200 yards is going to benefit Berger, who's just so good from like 200 yards in. He's going to hit fairways, which is good because, you know, this isn't that long a course for US Open. And I think hitting fairways is going to be amplified here. He's very good at doing that off the tee. And his around the green game was really good the last time out. So if he can keep that momentum with the putter and stuff, I think Berger is a great bet at plus 3,500. I think he's a great DraftKings target for GPPs. He's sandwiched in between like Burns and like Fitzpatrick. I don't even think Berger is going to be that popular. But another player I'm willing to take a shot with in this range, and actually a pretty good US Open record. He's got 2 top 10s. He's played this event like 5 or 6 times. This has been his best major. So Berger, Homa, Fleetwood, those are the guys I'm looking to pair with Cantlay. And, you know, I shout out to Sam Burns at plus 3,000. I feel like that price will dip down by the end of the week. I mean, plus 3,000 just seems like a good price. So Burns is going to be the absolute chalk in DFS this week, but I'm not necessarily sure if that's chalk you want to fade, just given how well he's played.
Real quick before we go, anything that, you know, I know we talk about weather a lot when we do this Monday show because it's still so early. Not so early, but it's not the Wednesday show where you're kind of right there. Anything else that could change your thinking that you might make adjustments with in terms of what you're looking at especially for a big event?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the weather goes, like we need some like massive like there's like a gusts like of like 50 miles per hour coming in, maybe not 50, but like, you know, over 20 all of a sudden developing Thursday afternoon. Then I would really try and get some exposure to the Thursday AM crowd. But like I said, that's really the only thing that caught my attention this week. So keep an eye on it. You know, for DFS purposes, obviously, you know, having like wave stacks on both sides of the draw is never a bad idea for a big event like this, especially where there's 156 players. The tee times are so spread out.
Yep. It's
never a bad idea for DFS to get like different wave stacks in if you're making like 10, 20, 100 lineups, whatever. But, you know, for a one lineup guy, I mean, unless we get more news, like it's probably not something you should be overly concerned with this week. It doesn't look like huge splits as of now. So,
okay. All right, very good. Looking forward to it. I don't know what the plan is for you Wednesday with the slate for golf because Emerson and Reed are going to be they're going to be out and about in the air. They're doing.
Well,
something.
I'll tell you what's going to happen. I'm probably going to carry this show like I usually do.
Well,
so.
that goes without saying. I mean, that will happen regardless. I just don't know if they'll be with you or not because I'm pretty sure they're doing something Wednesday, and I don't know exactly.
I think they are doing something Wednesday. I think it's probably going to be me and Sherwin again, Colin Sherwin, who's a really sharp golf guy. So if you haven't seen Colin yet, I'll be here Wednesday, and I'm sure Colin will be here with me. So yeah,
cool.
Tune in, definitely tune in. Yeah, Reed and Emerson are like, going to eat lunch or something, and like,
must be nice, huh?
Must be nice. Yeah, I know, must be nice, right?
Someone has to keep the ship afloat, So, oh my goodness. Okay, I'm reading our Slack, and I almost read it out loud. Remember those days, reading things out loud when you shouldn't read them? Always a good time. Thanks to Daniel and Eamon for their work behind the scenes. For Matt Meiselman, Jeff Ulrich, Brendan Glasheen. The slate tomorrow, I'm sure we'll hit on basketball with Meiselman again, and we'll get Chirag's thoughts. We'll get the latest update on the NBA Finals market, pending what happens tonight. And then, Wednesday we've got golf. Looking forward to a great U.S. Open this week. And, it's going to be good. All right. Good. Best of luck, everyone, with the NBA Finals if you're going to dabble in that tonight. And again, we'll be back tomorrow with the Sweat at 11 a.m. We'll see you then.